I'm here with Brian Smith, and I would like to start by you telling us a little bit about what you do.
Well, hello. I am Brian Romero Smith. I always have to put that in there.
Romero, yes.
Currently, I am a school partnership manager for Nearpod and Vocabulary, but that was after a very long 23-year career in education in various roles as a teacher, administrator, technologist, district consultant, regional consultant. I've done it, but now I'm here focusing on making digital instruction much better for our students and our teachers across the nation.
That's awesome. And I'll add that I know Brian. He was my own daughter's fifth grade teacher way back in the 2000s, 2007, 2008, when my daughter was in fifth grade. He is a technology whiz when it comes to children. So I'm really excited to talk to him about my innovation project and how we can make digital learning easier for teachers, easier for students, all the way down to our littlest babies in kindergarten and first grade, which is where I teach.
Cool.
So let's just start with when someone talks to you about what blended learning is, what is the first thing that you kind of comes to mind for you?
I always ask to make sure you understand what blended learning is.
Well, blended learning could look lots of different ways. So,
Absolutely. And that's the uniqueness of blended learning. You really have to take advantage of the culture that's within the school building and at home and within the community. But you also have to take advantage of partnership opportunities that a lot of people forget about when you're talking about blended learning. So those are the first questions that I typically ask. And then
what
the
kind of
second,
partner? Go ahead.
no, I'm gonna say, then the second question is, what's your infrastructure look like?
As far as in the classroom or in the district or in the school building.
Both, everything, even
Um,
at home.
oh, my personal at home is a little chaotic sometimes. The kids, as far as my blended learning that I'm working on in my classroom is, we are Title I school. We have kids that are considered at risk. Several students at risk, probably more than 80% of our population is at risk. However, once school shut down for COVID, and districts were given lots of money for technology, we are now one-to-one campus, where kindergarten, first grade are one-to-one iPads, second through fifth are Chromebooks, and they, in the event of shutdown, things like that, they can check them out and take them home. Other than that, they stay at school. So with that infrastructure, my particular blended learning is blended learning within the brick and mortar school, not necessarily remotely. Now, it also makes it very convenient in the event of a isolation in my classroom, on my campus, or any kind of classroom shutdowns that happen. It turns remote learning into a little bit more accessible situation because the students are already familiar with it. What kind of blended model learnings have you seen? Like, have you
Yeah.
looked at, talked about, seen, worked with yourself?
Yeah, and that's typically my third question. So we see station rotation, as a blended model. That's something that is easy to replicate in any classroom. Um, Usually at the high school level, we'll see something like a lab rotation, or they may be self-efficient to do an individual rotation, something of that nature. Of course, if you want to jump in the flipped classroom, that was probably the first one that was introduced, as a blended model as we began to talk more about what 21st century learning looks like back in the day.
Oh
Uh,
man.
yeah, and I think, right now, because we're in a virtual environment, we're starting to see that term enrich virtual blended learning floating around. And haven't necessarily delved into it too much and talked to a little people about, what that implementation looks like. But that is probably one of the more popular ones we're seeing now because of our current situation with this pandemic.
I have some thoughts on flipped classroom, especially when dealing with at-risk students.
Hmm.
I feel like that is one that probably increases the at risk factor, because ideally the flipped part happens at home. They're watching the videos or doing some pre learning before they come to school.
Mhm.
And then they come to school with the expectation that that pre learning occurred. And if the home support's not there, then the pre learning doesn't occur because the kid didn't want to do it, or whatever the case may be, or this device didn't work, or not somebody that knew how to troubleshoot, or the internet wasn't up to speed. And then they come to school with the expectation that the pre learning occurred when it never actually occurred.
Yeah, you see that often. That's why it's important that you know what your infrastructure looks like.
Yeah,
That's hence the reason why that's a question up front. Uh,
right,
but I think flip model can actually even work in those situations. I think what we've done is we've taken the at home part and thought that that can only be done at home.
right,
That's not necessarily always the case. If you know that you don't have the parental support, and I'm doing this in air quotes here, actually underneath the camera. The parental support, then you create a community that allows for that type of instruction to take place when they are not in the classroom doing some sort of project, or collaborative work to expand upon the learning that was done in a different environment. That's the key. It doesn't have to be at home. If you know that they don't have internet access at home, so what are some situations you can set up? They may go to the Boys and Girls Club. Can you work with the counselors, in those situations in order to do that, make that happen? I think we fail our at risk kids by assuming that there's no other way and
right.
something like that. But, as you know, I'm about building those relationships, and those relationships sometimes extend further than what's happening inside of the home as well.
Absolutely. So maybe even like an after school tutoring
Ab-
situation, just give them the access.
Absolutely. I have,
Um,
go ahead.
do what?
I'll say I got a ton of ideas, but go ahead.
Uh, same. I get in trouble a lot for my ideas. My poor kindergarten teachers that I work there are like, Felicia, this idea is too big. I need you to bring it down. Don't make it too complicated. And I'm like, but it'll work.
Mhm.
So going back to, I'm going to look at blended models. In my kindergarten class, our blended model is station rotation.
Okay.
And I know we see that a lot in the big kids, but the reason I chose this is because I've never seen a blended learning environment in kindergarten and first grade, which for me is why I feel like it's innovative, even though we see it everywhere else. Especially middle school. I think middle school and high school it's real big. Elementary less so, but even smaller percentage once you get into kinder and first grade. And I think there's several reasons to that. First one is the challenge of teaching them how to use technology. And the second one is that we as a community of teachers, I feel like there's a high percentage of teachers that feel like the littles shouldn't be on devices. Which I can balance that somewhat, because we do need to build fine motor skills. We got little hands that need to get stronger so we can write. We need to use our imagination. We need to play at 5 and 6 years old. But technology is a part of their everyday life.
Right.
I feel like if you have the right technology, teaching them how to use it is a non-factor. I don't know a 5-year old that doesn't know how to use their mom's iPhone,
Right.
which then transfers to an iPad.
Right.
Are they going to be able to memorize a student ID and password to log into a Chromebook that's managed by a district? No, that's probably going to be harder.
Yeah, but there are ways that you can actually avoid that. You know,
Right.
there are so much. There are simpler ways for a kid to be able to log on to a device. I think the reason why many people say that is because one, they feel that they have to have an enormous amount of patience in order to teach a kid how to use a device. The problem is we're looking at how to use a device from our lens and
Hmm.
not the kid's lens.
Right.
There is not a
And
grocery store you go into where you don't see a little kid walking around in the basket, with a device in their hand, can switch their movie back and forth, exactly, or play
mhm.
their games, whatever the case is. They just approach it differently than an adult does. And we have to get off of our pedestal and come down to their level to see how they view it and then teach them from there.
I tell you how much I love that, because so many times that is 100% it. We have to come off of our pedestal and realize that these kids, whether they're in kindergarten, fifth, eighth, we all the time make assumptions that they come in already knowing things and go from there rather than figuring out what they know
Yeah.
and then moving forward. So my blended learning model in my classroom does kind of address all the needs of kindergarten. We have technology stations where they are either initially learning, so flipped classroom type abilities, doing their initial learning, or just learning in the same concept in a different way. They have digital practice. I've reincorporated play based dramatic play into my classroom, so they
Beautiful.
get to use their imagination. I got a kitchen. I know a lot of districts are like, no, you can't have a kitchen. I put a kitchen in. I have a market so they can shop. And this is apples week because Johnny Appleseed. So they get to tomorrow, one of their stations, they're going to get to shop for apples. They get to go to the kitchen and make pretend apple pies because I think that's important.
I agree.
Their social emotional is huge there.
Mhm.
We have a discovery station where it's tactile. Um, right now, it's got a sand tray in it, and the letters are buried in the sand, and they pull letters out that look differently and sort
Mhm.
them by the letter or the sound.
So much
I
fun.
have a creation. I get to be fun. I have a creation station where it's like art. So tomorrow they're going to do tear paper, and tear paper is a fine motor skill. Tear paper art of an apple. I do math station. So tomorrow they're going to take half an apple and do patterns with paint. We do have a reading station. I don't do daily five
Okay.
because for me in kindergarten, I did daily five when I was a bigger kid teacher. But in kindergarten, when I send them to read to self and they don't know how to read to self, they're pretending to read. And I've delved real deep into the science of reading. And we teach them to pretend to read. And guess what I saw in fourth and fifth grade years ago?
Yeah, right.
Kids pretending to read.
Yep.
Still, we're teaching them from 5 years old to pretend how to read, so they're still doing it later, and they can't read or comprehend. So I do have a reading station, and it's got my library of books that they can choose from. It's got decodables. They have a bucket of books that we've practiced or that I've taught the coding of the words. So they should be able to decode those words, but they also have devices and QR codes that they can scan a QR code and listen to the story on the device. I have set up my whole class on Epic, so they can choose to go on to Epic and choose books to have read to them or read themselves wherever they're
Hmm.
at. And that gives them a lot of choice in how they do their reading. My phonics station has hand, fine motor, hand, eye coordination practice. We poke dots on the A and then use fuzzies to match the word that starts with an A, and pick it up with tweezers, something that's fine motor. We have regular, like, let me practice writing the letter A, but I
Hmm.
also have digital practice with boom cards, and seesaws that they can go in and digitally practice. But it's their choice. I'm not going to tell them which one to do. They get to choose which one they want to do.
Okay.
So all my stations that I do have a digital choice. So all my stations have at least four choices, one of which is digital, except writing. As writing, I do want them to practice using a pencil, using the right pressure. But there's choice there too. They may not know how to write their letters, so they're tracing letters. They may not know how to write a sentence, so they're tracing a sentence. Or they're writing their own story. That's kind of they have that choice there too. And then I have a stage so that when they're doing a dramatic play, they can have puppets. So they have that station too. So we have a whole lot of stuff that's 5 and 6 year old appropriate, but everything is also tied into the digital. Our district has IXL. So one station a week they do time on IXL. And that's kind of, as far as the blended learning. Have you seen or worked with any little kid teachers, primary grades, that try to utilize blended learning at all?
Very few.
Very few.
Yeah, just to be
Uh,
honest, very few.
why do you think that is?
To be honest,
Yeah.
um, the primary grades, have a tendency to fall back on what we call traditional learning. It is the belief that a lot of rote rehearsal has to take place. Um, I always say we cannot prepare kids for a future that's based on our past. And that's what's happening. We see the younger teachers that do come in and try to infuse, some new life to the way that kids learn, and they end up leaving. When I see it in most cases, uh,
Yeah.
because there's always going to be someone there that will say, "Honey, this is how we do it." So when I do my trainings, introduce blended learning, at a primary level, I always try to make sure that it is something that is achievable by even the teacher who's been there 20, 30, 40 years, or the case is.
Yeah.
And we begin with something simple. Usually it's with Seesaw.
Seesaw is beautiful. I love Seesaw. I actually started using Seesaw years ago, probably my 2012, 13, one of my first years in West Texas. And I used it with my big kids because I was always looking for something new and engaging that would make them excited about their learning, and started delving into Seesaw way back then. But Seesaw is, I love Seesaw.
Yeah. After I introduce Seesaw, I usually introduce Flipgrid to them because video is huge uh,
Yes.
for young kids. And as we've seen, when kids can record themselves inside of Seesaw, but giving primary kids the opportunity to articulate themselves in their own language is powerful.
Isn't that amazing?
It is very, very powerful, especially when adults listen and then react. When adults react, it creates a spark of curiosity, a drive to want to do
Yeah.
more. And what my teachers will see once they see kids actually doing something like this is, okay, I tried this. Well, maybe if I try something else, this will take this a little bit further. So you just have to ease it in, you
Yeah.
know, with some of them. But yeah, it's a lots of excuses when it comes to trying to introduce blended learning to primary teachers.
And I
Mainly,
feel a lot of it, yeah, I feel a lot of it falls back on that. Well, we have to develop their hand skills, or they get enough technology at home, things like that. I think that's a huge component as well. But yeah, so something you said that was interesting to me, because I've heard it as, I'm not a young teacher. I am one of the older ones, but my brain is young. So I've actually dealt with that same thing. Is we've always done it this way. I actually have team one on my team that we've always done it that way. And we've talked about this. We've had the conversation. She's type A, I'm type Z. I'm way past B. I'm into Z. And she likes to pull from her monthly files and make copies of all of the stuff that she does for the month. And I'm not. I hate copies. I hate papers. I hate worksheets. I lose them. They overwhelm my brain, and then I don't know what I'm working on. So I'm not a paper pencil person. We do have the practices so we can build those skills, but that's not the only thing we do. And we don't take a bunch of papers home all the time. So what you said is, these young teachers come in and they have mentors that say, this is the way we've always done it. If you were working with a teacher, because I have some ideas on how I know what I did. If you were working with a teacher, coaching them on how to address that, they want to make changes. They want to do these innovative things. They want to try new things, and they're coming across kind of a roadblock within their team, or even just on their campus from other teachers saying, we've never done that. We've always done it this way. What would be your advice to them? How would you tell them what could they do to address that so they could overcome that obstacle?
So, are you asking me the obstacle
I give,
of new teacher
of,
trying to influence?
well, not necessarily even influence, but not feel like they had to do what's always been done, even though they get some pushback from some other teachers, because we lose a lot of, you're right, we lose great teachers that way because there's pushback because people do things the way they've always done it. And I know I've felt it, the pressure of being judged for being different,
Hmm.
the pressure of being known as, oh, she's the loud teacher, she's the crazy teacher, she's the extra teacher, she's the one that does too much. I know that pressure. I know what that feels like. I'm not a 20-year-old just out of college. I'm a 40-year-old who's already built a lot of self-confidence. So it didn't phase me. So
Yeah.
if I have a 21, 22-year-old new teacher that wants to do these things and they're going to be great at it, but they're seeing that pushback from veteran teachers, what do you think is a good way for them to be able to move forward in their ideas,
Hmm.
not feel like they're stepping on toes? It's very careful balance.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
do you have any thoughts or ideas on how they could?
Well, you know, I lived that life.
I do, and so did I. This is this is why I called you.
I lived that life. First of all, I learned because I started later on as well that being set in your ways and doing things traditional has nothing to do with uh, any chronological aspect.
Not
You
at
know,
all.
it is definitely a mindset and a fear of I've always done it this way. If I try something else, I may fail.
Yeah.
So the first thing is helping people get over that particular piece by bringing up examples of opportunities to fail. And that's
Yes.
kind of how I see it. Second thing, I try to introduce them to the fact that each kindergarten class kid that comes into your door is not the same. Year by year, things change. What the schema that they bring with them changes year by year, but yet we're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, that's the definition of insanity, you know, for the
Yes.
most part. So the idea is go back to relationship. What is it that you know about your kid? And then what is it that you need to implement to ensure that they get to where they need to be as far as learning is concerned? You'll
Yes.
find out that not every kid's a worksheet that you're replicating all
Mm-hmm.
over. You know,
And I'm honest, not every kid's digital.
not every kid's a digital either.
So it's
But
being flexible enough to know this kid doesn't do as well digitally. They need more hands on.
that's why choice is so critical. You know, you
So
go
yeah,
ahead.
I know you've heard about my program through Lamar. Have you read or researched much into the COVA method of teaching?
No, I have not.
Okay, so the book, it's COVA, choice, ownership, voice, and authenticity.
Okay.
Providing those four things, which was part of our innovation project, had to incorporate. I mean, and it's simple things like we know this.
See, I wish, and I'm going to break, protocol here.
No, you're good.
See, that was the thing. These are not new things.
No,
And if I would have had the mindset or the fortitude to coin all of this stuff, man, I'd be a rich man.
for real.
But it's, but
Yeah,
you're right. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
it's
sorry.
not new. There's not new ideas. I think the where it becomes innovative is the ideas have always been there. When we look into all the different theories, the behaviorist theory, all these different theorists in education, they all had ideas on what was the best way to educate kids. And this is just another ideology that goes with that. But it's the one that is the hardest for teachers. So even though the ideas have always been there, it has not been widespread because doing blended learning, whether it's COVA method or any other acronym you give it, choice and ownership and giving voice to the students and making their learning authentic. Um, that is taking control away from the teachers and the educators. And it's no longer about me, the mage on the stage. It's now about the students, and it's getting too student centered. And we say that and we use those words all the time. And I can't tell you how many resumes are probably written saying student centered methods. And then you go into a classroom and they're not, because it's one of those niche words.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to not get caught up in those. You know,
Yes.
even the term innovation.
Yes.
You know, innovation
Because
is
the ideas, I mean, to come up with a truly innovative idea means you're coming up with an idea that nobody's really thought of before. And that's hard. I mean, there's so many brilliant brains out there. You're not going to, it's going to be hard now coming up with ideas that maybe other people have thought of and using them in different ways, such as kindergarten first. And I know they're out there.
so think about this.
But it's so rare.
So think about this. So I think that's where people hesitate because they feel that it has to be new ideas. So innovation is really just the implementation of ideas to improve something. So if you have a child who is struggling with this particular format or a way of teaching, then you just try a new idea. That's innovation in itself. We make innovation too fancy.
Right.
If you come off of your high horse and be willing to try something new with this particular child, every child is different. So you have to be unique with each child. You have to differentiate. When you
Yes.
do that and you implement something new and you continue to try new ideas with that child and you find it successful, that's innovation.
Oh man. And it feels amazing when you see that kid succeed.
So the benefit of innovation is those aha moments that those kids finally have. But if you're unwilling to try or you fear that you can't be innovative because you feel that it's a fancy term and you got to bring this brand new technology piece of technology in the classroom, no, that's not the case. You just have to be willing to implement something new for this child on a
Yes.
manner so they can actually grow.
Yeah. And it's crazy that we have so many tools at our disposal to do these things that are sometimes just collecting dust, and it hurts my heart. So what, and I know you said you work with Nearpod,
Hmm.
and you've worked with vocabulary.
Hmm.
Have you written some of their songs?
No, I have
Tell me
not.
you have. Oh,
I have not.
well, I mean, that's just your next step, right?
That is next.
Um, so I have several teachers that are huge vocabulary fans. With those and kind of considering some other ones, kind of what programs, I know you said Seesaw and you talked about Flipgrid, but what other programs do you feel would be developmentally appropriate for kids that are like 5 and 6 years old to introduce them into kind of blended learning, um, or any kind of digital component to their education?
Oh, now you know that's a hard one for me because those are the babies. I am all about, however, anything that allows the younger kids to create. Um, so, for example, being able to use things like Wonder Workshops with Dash and Dot. Have you heard
I
of that?
haven't heard of that one, but I'm gonna write it down when I go back and watch this recording.
It looks like coding. However,
Oh,
it is play where you're learning to problem solve.
oh my goodness. Yeah, definitely looking at that one.
Things of that nature, I think, are missing. Ozobot is a great tech tool to teach kids how to write. You know, not a lot of people haven't done
I
it,
mean,
but Ozobots is a little robot that follows lines.
what?
Yeah.
Oh, so it like a magnetized line, maybe something like that?
It's a marker that's specialized in the robot. It sees those lines and it follows those lines. So
Oh,
getting the kids and a lot of
man, the fine motor.
a lot of people haven't done this right. You're teaching the kids to write, and then that robot follows their writing. successfully, that right there is motivation to continue on.
Oh man, yeah, I can. I have about 5 kids in my head right now, like going, oh, oh, yeah, about 5 of them.
So things like that I like to see implemented inside of the classroom. Of course, seesaw is great. Video is great. Um, Flipgrid, it's not Flipgrid. Vocabulary, of course, uses music at that
Yes,
very young age to teach those difficult concepts, but also concentrate on the vocabulary that they may struggle with. Cute thing that vocabulary does, it helps them create a song. Yeah, so there's a
wow,
vocabulary game where they assess, what they've learned, and as they are putting the correct answers where they belong, it helps them build a song. Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, so so things like that. Anything that's going to highly engage them, in things that they see as successful, not how we determine what success is. I think those are beneficial, at the primary level.
Absolutely. Have you done any work with Chatterpix? I'm going to assume you have.
Of course, I
Um,
chatter pigs.
it wasn't me, my brilliant idea, but I have a coworker that she was in kindergarten. She's in first now. She actually is my youngest, my 6-year-old first grade teacher. And I have her 5-year-old in kindergarten. We just trade kids every morning and every afternoon. But she did Chatterpix, and they did I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if it was their animal research or their plant research. It was one of them, but then they got the picture of either the animal or plant, and they drew the line, and then they recorded their voice to explain all the things they had learned. And those kids were so proud
Yeah.
of that one little video that they had learned, and it was a pretty amazing little project for them.
Yeah, and then when you put Chatterpix inside of Flipgrid and allow that sharing and the viewing of each other's videos and allow
Oh,
that, what you're down building is an authentic audience for your students.
oh
So,
my goodness.
and that is critical. So doing some app smashing is also helpful.
That is, yeah, absolutely.
And
And then
kids.
do what?
Green screening with younger kids.
Yeah, I love doing stuff like that because they just see the background and they're amazed.
Yeah, you've got the kitchen.
Yep.
So what if you put in the green screen background like a fake chopped show?
Oh, that would be, and I could do it on my stage. I could put my kitchen on the stage.
There you go.
Do a bet. Oh, I have to redo my room now. I'm redoing my classroom. I already had some ideas because I have to do my Apple room transformation in the morning for tomorrow. But yeah. So yeah, I've got my weekend is now planned.
That's
um, as far as like going back into the flipped classroom end of things,
mhm.
somewhere they could actually get their learning from and more of a receptive digital learning.
Mm.
I know like my district has gives us access to discovery education,
Okay.
some things like that. But are there any other programs, resources, apps that you've seen that would be beneficial to that? I know I have some, and I'll share those. But I want to hear what you have also, or what you've seen.
Now I am like extremely biased here.
That's fine. I'll
But
take bias.
if you have not seen the content inside of Nearpod, you're missing out.
I have a Nearpod account. I
So,
have not dived deep into it because when I got my Nearpod account, we were also face to face and remote learning for COVID. So I
mhm,
had both remote and face to face students. I started my grad school classes. We were doing the Texas Reading Academy for kindergarten, and I was rewriting all of the math curriculum for our district, all in that same year. So I have the Nearpod account,
mhm.
but I haven't dived really deep into it. I've kind of just skimmed the surface.
Yeah. So what people don't know is that Nearpod allows for student-paced learning.
So I
So
like that.
when people do flip classroom, they usually just turn to videos. So that's where Ed Puzzle or Play Posit, something of that nature, comes in to where you can actually add questions to the videos so you can ensure that there's some learning going on while they're watching, the content. But Nearpod goes a little bit further. So they have that video integration, but it also allows for different opportunities to embed formative assessment throughout the lesson. So what we don't really
Nice.
get at home is instruction. We get content with no instruction. Where a
Right.
lot of parents get frustrated because, what do you mean there's no book? There's just this and this is that.
Yeah.
How's my kid supposed to learn? Supposed to do it on their own? Well, that's what's missing is that instructional piece. So you use Neuropod, you add the instruction piece with your videos, with your formative assessment, with your virtual field trips, with your simulations that they can play and practice at home. And when they get home, they haven't missed you because you embedded the instruction in that particular environment. By the time they're there, you know exactly how they did because you get a report of every single piece of formative assessment that they did at home. So
That's amazing.
when they get to school, you already have analyzed what you need to do as far as project is concerned, collaborative opportunities are concerned, whatever activities that you're actually going to do because you've got the data
Yes.
to show you exactly where you need to go.
Oh, that's awesome. Definitely going to be looking into that. I know one thing that I've used in my class a lot I used it last year when I started. Is one of our tech stations is Osmo.
Of course.
And personally, I may have sent Jeff Bezos to space myself with my Amazon purchases, but I do have four. I have four Osmo bases set up, and it helps for me to differentiate. Two of them are set up with the letter game with the little monster. I
Yeah, yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember the name of it off the top of my head. Where they're actually just taking the squiggles and
Yeah.
creating the letter and learning about the sounds. But then my kiddos that already have sounds and they're already blending, they're set up on the other two Osmos that have the word tiles. So it's got the letter tiles and they're building words and playing those games.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Teacher Monster Read is another big hit in my classroom for phonics. My struggle is I'm having a hard time. My heart is in math. I love math. I actually messaged a friend yesterday and told them that I missed teaching expanded notation.
Yeah, you don't get that in
I
Canada.
don't know that anybody's ever said that in their life, but I do. I miss teaching expanded notation. And don't tell anybody I said it, but I miss teaching long division.
Huh.
I miss teaching it in the different ways, finding compatible numbers. I missed those things of teaching kindergarten. It was a trade-off, like the content versus the kid, and so I find really fun ways to do the kindergarten math. But what I haven't had an easy time finding is something that is a math, like a teacher monster read. Osmo has them, so
Yeah,
I'll
it's a
gotta
factory.
they have math stuff, but there's not a teacher monster to read for math. And I find that a lot of the math ones are either they don't go low enough for kindergarten, like Prodigy. I loved Prodigy as a fourth and fifth grade teacher. They don't do kindergarten content. So last year, at the end of the year, I had 5 students that were high enough in math that I felt I could even start them on Prodigy. And that was just in the last couple months. Um, and to get a Prodigy for kindergarten. So I've recently looked into Happy Numbers. I just found it, so I haven't looked far into it. But do you know like things along that line, maybe for math? Because reading's there. There's so many for reading, but I also feel like some of the things like Starfall are not rigorous enough.
Oh, I forgot about Starfall.
ABC Mouse. I've set my kids
Yeah.
up, but again, it's not as rigorous as we need it to be. For me, that's more of a preschool, pre-K
Mm-hmm.
level content.
I get it. Uh,
So
IXL has math at the.
IXL does have math. It's just not as engaging for the kids. So
Yeah,
like Teacher Monster Read has the games and the monsters and they travel.
student led.
Yes.
And you said your kids have Chromebooks or iPads?
Mine have iPads. We just had carts and just like 9 iPads per classroom, and our new IC has recently done the numbers and said we're a 1-to-1 campus. We just don't have it distributed correctly. So she got all the iPads from every teacher. We have enough for every K1 classroom to be 1-to-1. And then all second through fifth is Chromebooks because the login's just easier. And then they're touchscreen Chromebooks still, but for those kinder babies, I can get styluses. I have a cup of styluses next to my iPads,
Hmm.
and they can practice writing letters on an iPad, and that's not as easy on a Chromebook. I'm not saying it's not possible; it's just not as easy, even
Yeah.
though it's touchscreen.
Yeah, with at the kindergarten label, a lot of that math is introductory level. You're probably not going to see a lot of,
Yeah,
uh,
but we get into composing. We're composing and decomposing numbers, and we are adding and subtracting, and we are doing number sentences and building graphs,
yeah,
reading graphs. We do get into harder stuff.
and you should, and you
Yeah,
should,
absolutely.
that should be the expectation. I was just thinking, as I'm putting on the business hat on, is it financially beneficial for me to develop programs, at that particular level? You're going to see the
Right.
dominance of ABC Math. Even Khan Academy has a kindergarten. You know,
Khan Academy Kids.
yeah.
That one is pretty amazing.
So you've got those approaches as well. I think anything game based with math is going to be helpful for the kids.
Yeah.
I can't remember the one we used to use. It was like a zoo academy. I can't remember exactly what it is.
Zuma.
I have to look
Zuma.
it up. They're taking care of animals at the same time while they're learning math, and
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
yeah,
Especially since we get so deep into animal and living and non-living, also in our science content.
yeah, yeah. I think where we lose though the opportunities in math is teaching them the vocabulary early.
Yeah,
So
just knowing what composing and decomposing is, and knowing that representing numbers is different than just writing a number and counting. I think our parents struggle with that too. They don't understand that that's what we have. That's where we're at. So they come in there like, I don't know why my child's struggling. He can count to 100, but he
yeah,
doesn't know how many five is. Like he
mm.
can't show me what a group of five looks like.
That's where your
He has
grocery
no one-to-one correspondence.
that's where your grocery store comes in.
Yeah,
See, a
unless
lot.
you're like me and you order all your groceries online and have it delivered because you don't like to go to the store.
No, meaning you put a grocery store in your classroom.
Oh,
I
I thought you
mean,
meant with the
yeah,
parents, but yeah,
because a lot of math has to be, applicable.
yeah.
That's why most kids learn math easiest is when they can apply it. When you get to that upper level and they say, ma'am, am I really going to use this later on? That's when they become, extremely
Yeah,
disinterested if you haven't, been engaging before. But it's got to be applicable and relevant. So anything you can do that with money, grocery stores, going to the farm, things of that nature, and building math that way, I think those are beneficial. So
absolutely. Going to space.
going to space now,
We're gonna, yeah,
absolutely.
when we do space, we're gonna build a little space center, and I'm gonna have a space tent and a rocket, and I'm gonna wear a sun costume,
That's why
and
that's why you need the green screen.
yeah, that's why I needed. Oh, it's happening. I'm gonna send you a picture when it happens.
I'm gonna send you a
Um, do what?
I'm gonna send you a green screen.
I would so use it. I'm the only one with a stage, and it gets pointed. Felicia, why do you have a stage? Because I need one. Why don't you have a stage?
Why don't you? Exactly. Why don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you have any other ideas or thoughts for me or any other teachers out there that want to implement blended learning using Nearpod vocabulary or any other, there's your plug, any other content, what is one last little bit of advice you would give to a teacher jumping into this?
Get out of isolation. Quit trying to figure it out on your own. Find your professional learning network, your PLN. That means either getting involved on platforms like Twitter. You're seeing teachers leverage Instagram now. Oh, leverage TikTok.
TikTok all day.
Do that. That type of professional development is critical because you're seeing these wonderful ideas being used. Now, granted, you have to take all of it with a grain of salt, because their kids maybe completely different than your kids. Their
Yes.
support is going to be different than your support. But what can you glean from what it is that they're doing and apply it into your classroom, to be innovative, meaning trying new ideas in order for your improvement to take place with your students. Don't be afraid to do that. Get out of isolation. Find find your group of people who are moving forward. Stop being the smartest person in the room, and want to grow.
That is, that's really amazing advice. My words have stopped working. Really great advice. And I am so excited you joined me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. This is truly an honor. I
I'm
get
so excited.
honor.
Okay, so I'm just gonna cut this part out.
No problem. Come on now. You got this.
You're not 5.
It's just me though.
I know, but you're not 5. I'm full of theater when you're 5.